Welcome to the Help Me Understand podcast, where we cut through the noise we see on social media to find advice that actually works. Today, I'm thrilled to have Macklen Mayse on the podcast. Macklen is part of a business mastermind group with me. She's a strength coach with a background as a yoga teacher. So as you can imagine, I knew I needed to bring her on the podcast to talk all about strength. Strength. Strength has been a big topic in my world over the past few years. I fell in love with yoga and I typically only do body weight movement. It's just simpler for me that way. Yet I've had a sneaky suspicion for a while that I need to add more external load. But how exactly do I go about doing that and in a way where I can carry forward my bodyweight practice that I love so much? So in this episode, you'll learn practical tips from starting a strength training program from scratch, especially for someone who's hesitant to get into the gym. And I'll be honest, you'll see me struggle with some of the concepts quite a bit. This was not an easy conversation for me to have, but I'm glad I did it. Stay tuned after the episode to learn the changes I implemented in my own life as a result from this discussion. Also, there is one thing I should tell you about this episode before we get into it, and that's that when we were recording it, my internet connection was a little unstable. It created a lot of delays where Macklen and I were unknowingly talking over each other. And while I tried to edit that out as best I could, you'll still hear that peek through in the recording a little bit. Know that you have my apologies. I really hope it's not annoying. And mostly just that it's an endearing part of the whole podcast process. I'm excited to share this conversation with you. There's so much to get into. So, let's get started. Alrighty, Macklen, thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have you, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time.
Thanks so much for having me, Brenton. Happy to be here.
Yay!
Yeah.
So how you and I know each other, that's where I figured I'd start this whole thing with, is that, so you and I have the same business coach, and we've been in each other's realm for probably the last year and a half or so. So we've gotten to see some really cool behind the scenes action in each other's businesses and cheer on some celebrations and be there through some frustrations and confusions and all that jazz. But it's interesting because this is actually the first one-on-one in the weeds conversation that we've had about what we actually do for a living.
I know.
So why I want to have this conversation with you is because our business coach works with people in the yoga, the wellness, and fitness space. And so she brings all these great people together. And you are someone who used to teach yoga, and now you don't really do that anymore. And instead, you teach people strength. And
Correct.
I am new to the strength, to be honest. I've been teaching yoga for like 13 years. And at this point, here's what I know. I know that the data is clear that as part of the aging process, our muscle mass declines and our bone density declines. And that if we want to experience a life where our body is pretty capable in our 60s, 70s, even 80s, 90s, and 100s,
Right.
we have to be counteracting that decline by putting on more muscle mass and more bone density. This puts me in kind of a sticky situation because I teach and practice pretty much exclusively body weight movement. And I've adjusted that practice so that it doesn't look like a standard power yoga or vinyasa class, like just a typical yoga class you would walk into in a studio or at the gym. I've incorporated more mobility routines in there. if you like took a yoga class with me, most of the stuff we do, maybe half of the stuff that we do doesn't really have a yoga name. It's not a yoga pose name, but it's on a yoga mat, and it's designed to really wire up the postural muscles. So we do a really good job of getting the glutes on first and getting the core on and getting the shoulder girdle on. But it's all through body weight movement on a mat. And I can feel there's limitations with this. For example, I'm in Europe right now, and we walk to the grocery store, we buy mineral water that's in like these 1.5 liter size things, and they come in a 6-pack. And now I'm walking 2 blocks plus 4 flights of stairs with this. And I can tell I'm not trained up for it. It's not creating issues for me, but I can feel where in 5 years, if I keep going down this path, I'm in my mid-30s right now. So if I keep going down this path, and I know the decline is exponential at some point, that doesn't bode well for me. So I want to have this conversation with you because I don't want to lose my yoga practice. I find so much merit in that, but I also don't want to, for lack of a better word, waste my time. I want to be effective with how I use my time. So what I would love to get from today's conversation is just a shitload of clarity around what type of strengthening do we need as we get older, and what does that look like practically speaking? Can we do it at home? Do we have to go to the gym? What do we have to invest in? What programming does it look like? I'm interested in all of this kind of stuff because my hope and dream would be I emerge from this conversation tomorrow morning and I'm like, I know how to start putting on more muscle mass and more bone density. Like I have a pathway in front of me, whereas right now it's a tunnel of darkness. So I'm hoping with that we can begin with maybe where I am now, which is a yoga teacher. You used to teach yoga. Now you coach strength. What happened?
A lot happened. The main thing that happened was I was realizing that my joints were feeling pretty shitty, and I felt chronic stuff in my shoulder. And so I went to a PT, and he gave me some strength exercises. And around the same time, I started going to the gym. Now, I can't quite remember why. It may have been I was getting little information here and there from yoga people that I was listening to and following, and hearing that strength needed to be incorporated. But by any means, I started going to the gym along with doing PT for my shoulder. And that took me down a path of figuring out what weight training is all about. That's the short version.
What were you doing that was making your joints feel shitty?
I was teaching yoga at the time full time, which means I was teaching 5 to 10 classes a week. And that was to children and adults. And the volume of yoga that I was doing, granted, I was also demoing a lot, especially for the children's yoga classes, but I was demoing. So the amount of volume that I was doing of yoga was quite large for a weekly physical activity. And at the same time, I was also commuting in New York City throughout 3 boroughs to teach all these different classes. And I was commuting on bicycle because I'm a little bit of a psycho. And I like to go hard. So I rode my bike 20 plus miles per day and taught yoga. And so I was just doing like the same things over and over and over every day. I was doing however many thousands of lunges in yoga classes, and then on the cycle it's the same motion, lunge, push, push, push. And to your point of body weight in yoga, like pushing a lot with my hands, pushing a lot with my legs, and not getting any pull work. And yeah, so it's basically overuse.
Interesting.
That's what I've determined.
And so what exercises did the PT give you that made things start to feel better?
Yeah. Well, there were two different PT moments. I went for a shoulder issue. Well, was my hip the first one? I think actually my hip was the first one.
What was the hip?
And she gave me it was like tightness in the front of the hip, and she thought it was maybe an impingement of sorts. And so we did a bunch of hamstring stuff, and that's what I remember. I remember she also was doing some IT band rolling, and that was like the death of me. I never want anybody to touch my IT band again. And yeah, I remember doing hamstrings on a Bosu ball or like a Pilates ball, and actually feeling my hamstrings more and be like, oh shit, that's a part of my body that I don't feel very connected to. That's cool. And also I'm a little angry because I wish I'd known sooner. And, I just want to be mad at somebody. But I did the exercises, and yeah, that's what I remember. There was definitely more that she gave me.
Okay.
I feel like I went to her for both, because I also did some shoulder reaches. I did like this shoulder reach at the wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was there no equipment
I think I went to her
for that shoulder reach at the
there was
wall?
a cable. No, not
Okay.
not the shoulder reach. I don't know why she had me doing that, actually. But I was doing some banded stuff, some banded internal rotation. And yeah, that was 2016, maybe 2017.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So with the hamstring stuff, that makes sense to me in the way that like yoga is constantly stretching our hamstrings. So it's not really, I mean, I had injury in my upper right hamstring where it felt like kind of tendinopathy. It's never been diagnosed, but just kind of a throbbing pain underneath my right sitting bone. That felt like overstretching. And then when I started incorporating more hamstring strength movements, which even is just like contracting the muscle at that point. Like at that point, my muscle was just so not used to contracting that contracting it felt like a strengthening exercise. And that has really helped the...
Well, yeah.
You say, well, yeah.
Sorry, I know. I was just, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Say more about that. The enthusiasm is there. Say more about it.
Well, I mean, you can contract a muscle in an isometric contraction and your leg won't move. So you're making your muscle work and doing the action. Like if you're in Skandasana, is that where you're kind of one leg out to the side?
Yeah, you're in like a side lunge with one leg out. Yeah.
Right. So you can be in that position and then dig the long leg that's out. You can dig that heel into the ground and create a hamstring contraction. Yeah, and feel that, but it doesn't move at all. So maybe I was confused by what you said, but I got excited about isometric contractions.
Okay, so I think that this is a good segue into what does it mean to build strength? And the reason I'm asking this is because I feel like my body, it is a certain amount strong already. And every muscle is a different amount strong than the muscles around it. And so help me understand what does it mean to build strength in like very basic terms?
You overload your muscles and your tissues enough that they experience a new load and they create a new force, and then they create more tissue to respond. So you're lifting weights, and your bones will start to create more bone, lay down more bone because of the load that is on that joint. You do bicep curls with some weights, and your muscles will go like, oh, you need me to work here in this position, so I'm going to load on some more muscle tissue over the next few days and weeks to respond to what you're asking of it. It's a bit of a conversation inside your body.
It. Okay, so your system is capable of doing a certain amount. So you give your system a little bit more than it's capable of. And in response to that challenge, it will rise to meet the challenge over the next several days through the recovery period by building more muscle and more bone.
Yep. And alternatively, if you ask your body to do something and to lift something and it's not prepared, i.e. it's not strong enough, or it doesn't have the range of motion available, then that's where we get the tissue damage, but in a like traumatic injury way.
Got it. So there's almost like it's like a sweet spot. There's like a Goldilocks spot of load under which I'm not giving it the input to make the good changes to create more muscle mass and more bone density. But if I do too much, then I injure myself.
Potentially. So I hesitate to say that other part because most people are too afraid to actually lift up heavy weights.
Okay.
So yes. I hesitate to say that other part, but in this, like, to understand how injuries do happen and, like, on the other side, how to get strong. To your point, I think that's a really good idea. Like, have the Goldilocks version of picking up some heavy weights so that you can create some new tissue.
Perfect. Okay. And as I understand it, that Goldilocks zone moves with you over time as you build more muscle mass and bone density. And this is how you you progressively add more weight into your whole regime. And this, quite honestly, is like where shit starts to get scary in my head, because yoga is such a simple thing. It's like I roll out my yoga mat and I coexist within this space. And I like that container. I like the creativity that I can explore in that container. And now you introduce this idea of strength to me where it's sort of like, okay, well, I'm going to need some equipment today to start with. And then I'm going to get used to that equipment. I'm going to adapt to the challenge. And that equipment is no longer going to be challenging for me. And I'm going to need to go explore new equipment. And this is where my brain starts to just go, hold on, no, not interested.
Too much overload, not going to do it.
Yes. So can we talk a little bit about this? Like, what, I don't even know what the question is right now, but it's like, essentially, if I'm dancing around the curiosity here, it's like, I want to get started. I don't really know what I'm capable of. So, I could go to Walmart and pick out weights that are too light, like what you're talking about, because it never dawned on me that I should be starting with something 20 pounds heavier. Because in my mind, that 20-pound heavier weight terrifies the shit out of me. Because I am just like, no way, that's 45 pounds. I can't carry 45 pounds. But maybe I could carry 45 pounds. I don't know. I've never done it. I don't know what too much is. So what, like, okay, so first of all, before we even talk about equipment, I guess it gets into like, I'm a person who likes to be at home, but I recognize that there's the gym too. Do you have a strong opinion about strength training at home versus the gym?
I think you have to meet yourself where you are, especially if you're doing something new. So if you are most comfortable at home, I would recommend grabbing a couple weights, and we can talk about the amount, and starting at home and building confidence there. I think long term, there are three main choices, and it is stick at home and invest in your home gym equipment and like build that out, but you need space,
Yes.
you need storage. It will be a cost to you. Or you could do a gym, join a gym. Everybody has the equipment there. You just go use it. Third option is to do classes like CrossFit, where you go with people and take a class of sorts. But the two main options are at home or gym. And depends on how much space you have at home, depends on how much money you want to invest, and whether or not you like being around people.
Yeah.
Some people do it at home and then realize that they need to be around other people. And they're willing to kind of work through those gym newbie jitters of like, ooh, I'm the new person. Everybody's looking at me. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, that's my take on home gym versus big gym.
Got it. Okay. I'd love to follow both trains of thought because I'm sure the listeners some will veer more in one direction and some in the other. Maybe going at the home gym route to begin with, like what are the essential pieces of equipment that I should start with?
Yeah. Well, how much was that? How much do you think those water bottles weighed when you carried them? You said 1.5 liter, and there were 6 of them.
Yeah. I mean, heavier than my I have like a 20-pound kettlebell? Or this is heavier than that? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would guess probably like 25 pounds in one pack.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess that. So if you can carry that a couple blocks and up some stairs, then I would probably recommend to get a 30 to 35 pound kettlebell as your next step, because you have a 20 pounder.
Yeah, and I probably did it the way that you see a lot of other people do it, where I have like a 5-pound kettlebell and a 10-pound
Sure.
kettlebell, and then I have the 20-pound.
Sure. So basics, it's nice to have a pair of dumbbells that are moderate to heavy. And we can talk about what that would be for you. And then I love kettlebell because it's so versatile in a bunch of different ways. And it's a bit more athletic if that's kind of your shindig. But it also gives you a different experience. I just feel like you can do more with it. So a heavy kettlebell, starting with one. If you can only do one moderate hand weight and one heavy hand weight, that's fine, and you can start there. But having 2 weights is nice for doing things a bit quickly too, like concise, doing things in a concise way. If you can do 2 arms at once, if you can do 2 legs at once.
Got it. Okay.
So 2 dumbbells, a kettlebell, and maybe some resistance bands, but invest in the iron.
Invest in the iron. Yes. For the dumbbells, what is the difference between moderate and forget the other word that you used, moderate and the other thing?
I maybe said heavy.
Heavy.
Maybe. Yeah. A moderate weight would be something that you could do like 20 or 30 reps with. So if we're talking about like an overhead press, if you're moving, pushing something overhead, if you have, let's say, one of those, you measure, what's a good way to do this? You have a 20-pound kettlebell. If you can press your kettlebell overhead and you can only do that 5 times, then that's probably a heavy weight for
Perfect.
you.
Okay. Because I
If
could
you have
go
a 10
try this
pounder and you can
out.
do it for sure.
Oh, go. Yeah, I could go try this out at like Target, wherever they sell them. I could just,
Do.
yeah, like just go be like, where do I max out at 20? Okay, that's my moderate. And then where do I max out at 5? Okay, that's my heavy. And now I should get 2 of each of those. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
2 of each of those. Okay.
And I think for the heavy region, it's more 5 to 10. Like if you do 5 to 10 overhead and you get to 10 and you can do 0 more, then that's probably a good overhead weight. Now that would be, I'm thinking, because your hips can manage a ton more weight.
Exactly. That's
Right.
only my moderate and my heavy when I'm pushing something overhead. But if I now go to a bicep curl or start working with my lower body, those have different capacities.
This is where when we are building up a home gym, it can get a little bit it can take up some space. And having more options is better. Like it's always better to have more options, and that's why I really do like a gym and going to a gym so that you can test it out and figure it out. Some gyms even have like a 2-week trial period or a 1-week test it out kind of situation, and that can do a lot. Or you could just visit Target, once a week and figure it out.
Totally. Got it. Okay. So if we then pivot over to the gym, then if you start a free trial, and now what do you recommend day 1 looks like in there?
Oh. Well, can I go back to the weights part? Because I feel like I have a clear answer.
Got it.
So most of my clients, okay, cool. And then I really want to get back to the gym, both in conversation and
in life.
sometime later today. Yeah. Yes. I love the gym. So most of my clients, I find they do pretty well with getting 1 to 2 15-pounders for shoulder work, and then getting a heavier weight. And this is where a kettlebell comes in handy just because of the form that it's in. Probably a 35-pounder is nice, and we can use those for squats and deadlifts and that sort of thing. And you can utilize the 15-pounders for overhead, but you can also do some pulling with them. So you can go 2 ways. You could do 2 15-pounders and a 35-pound kettlebell, or it's nice to have a 25-pounder in there too. So if you can only buy 3, it would be a 15-pound dumbbell, a 25-pound dumbbell, and then a 35-pound kettlebell. That's what I would start with. Mm-hmm. Going to the gym on the first day, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A routine for that. These are the basics, and the basics that you do on day 1, you're going to be doing through your 90s and however long you live. They are pushing exercises like push-ups and dips. They are pulling exercises like single arm rows or assisted pull-ups. They are lunges with weights, since you already do body weight stuff. It's deadlift, working the back of the hips, and push, pull, lunge. Oh, squats, deadlifts, and carries. So farmer carries, like carrying your hand weights, but it carries over to carrying your water bottles. Push, pull, hinge, which is the deadlift, squats, farmer carries. Oh, and rotation. So a mix of those things.
And then lunge too was in that mix. Okay. So that's like 6 or 7 things.
6 main moves. Yep.
Okay. 6 main moves. And how should I be thinking about this in terms of programming? Like what to do in which sessions, how to kind of combine them together?
I can tell you exactly what to do on day one, but if you don't show up and continue doing it for 3 weeks and more, then it's not going to make a difference, because consistency is the hardest muscle to grow when you're first learning to weight train. And so the most important thing is to show up and go there and try some shit and then go home and rest and eat and try it again the next day. Now, if you do want a concise, clear thing on what to do, let me think for 15 seconds and I'll tell you. You warm up your shoulder joints, your hip joints, and your spine, which you beautifully teach your clients already, using mobility or dynamic movements. Give yourself 6 to 8 minutes to do that. And then do something big and exciting. Do some deadlifts or some bench presses or some squats. So have that be your main move. And then do something a bit more accessory. You could do some bench push-ups. You could do some split lunges, everybody's thing to love and hate at the same time. And then do some smaller stuff, like start with the big muscles and get small. So you can end it with some bicep curls, some tricep extensions, some calf raises, some hamstring curls. And if you're at the gym, you have machines there at your fingertips.
Okay, so here's my big problem is that I've always been a movement avoider. I will like sit on the couch rather than get up and do anything. I've never liked the sensation of muscles burning in my body. And my yoga practice has really helped me transform that a lot. Like I would say, I have a much better relationship with movement now than I did. But the reason I bring this up is because because of this tendency, I don't have that, like, let me push it, let me get after it. Like, I don't have that in me. I almost err on the side of my workouts being ineffective because I don't do enough. So how do I know that it's like I'm doing enough? Like, what are the signs that I should be monitoring for that I'm like, yes, this was enough for me today. This was a good workout, and now I'm going to go home and rest.
I do remember us, by the way, having a conversation about couches and like spending time in the couch. So I do remember a conversation about that. And I was hoping you would bring it up. Okay. So there is a skill that takes some time, especially for women, to develop in the gym, and it is the skill of aggression. And it is required when lifting heavy weights. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have it from day one. That means that if you keep sticking with it, you will learn how your body responds, and you will learn how to kind of eke out and expand your boundary. Things to look for: your increased heart rate. Nothing crazy, but just feeling like a heart pump. You might feel it in muscle pump. Like if you feel your muscles kind of filling and getting a little pumpy, that's a good place. The next day, if you feel sore in your muscles, that's cool. Doesn't always happen. I don't always use that as a barometer of the fact that I did something. If I don't feel sore, it doesn't mean that I didn't do something. Maybe I was just going in more of an endurance, working in more of an endurance place, rather than strength building, and that's okay.
Interesting.
When I watch my clients lift weights, and I'm trying to gauge if they're in the right weight range or not, meaning like what they're lifting,
Yeah.
I'll pay attention to their breathing, and I'll look at their face and see what their facial expressions are doing. If they look like easy peasy, it's time to up things and either give them more reps, more sets, or heavier weight. If it looks like they're straining to the point where they are gonna like break a blood vessel, I'm like, okay, maybe we just do a little bit less, or maybe I check in and see how they're doing. So you could look at your face in front of a mirror, or I mean, you're probably concentrating so much that you wouldn't do that, but if you have a little gym fairy on your shoulder that's looking at you and they're like, oh, you're making this is tough face, good for you, Brenton, you just kicked ass on your assisted pull-ups. Yeah, I think there's also kind of this emotional thing that happens when you lift weights, and after you're done, it's a feeling of accomplishment and just a sense of satisfaction. I don't know that everybody feels that, but I know a lot of my clients do, and they report back. They're like, "Oh my god, I did bench presses with 25s, and I feel amazing." And I'm like, "Yeah, great, look at you." And you said earlier that you don't know how capable you are, or like what you're capable of. And I think the cool thing about weightlifting is that you get to show yourself that you're way more capable than you think you are. And I think that's a really exciting place to be.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that for sure. And so it sounds like there's kind of this, I don't know if ratio is the right word, but there's like a ratio between the heaviness of the weights, the amount of reps in a set, and maybe even the amount of sets that you do. Can you help me understand that trifecta of things? Because that oftentimes gets confusing for me as well.
Yeah, that's understandable. And that's because there are so many different ways that you can program. Depends on your goals. How do I want to answer this? So let me make sure I understand your question. You're asking for clarity about the different way, like the different kind of things that can be turned in a program to get different results. Like you might
Exactly.
turn the reps up and down, you might turn the number of sets up and down, you might turn the weight amount up and
Exactly.
down. Is that
And
right?
so totally. And some of that might be like fueled by, hey, I only have access to a lighter weight or a heavier weight today. And so what does that then mean for the reps and the sets and how those three interlock with each other?
Right. Well, there are different factors. So if you only have how to answer this? This is so interesting. If you're going for endurance rather than strength, then you will lift lighter weights for more reps and probably more sets. In the strength world, if you're going for like powerlifting kind of experience where you can really lift tons of weight, but you only do it 1, 2, or 3 times, then you're going to be lifting lots of weight, tons of weight, but at low rep amounts, but probably for higher sets. Like you're going to lift, let's say 200 pounds on a deadlift, and you'll do that 3 times, and then you'll rest 3 to 5 minutes because your body needs time to recover. And then you'll repeat that for a bunch of sets, and you're working some big power. But for the purposes of the people that are probably listening to this who are yoga practitioners and are hearing that they probably should start lifting weights, then it's great to start in a rep range of 8 to 14, 8 to 14 reps with a weight that feels challenging but doable.
Challenging but
And
doable. When you say 8 to 14, is that because you max out at 8 to 14?
when you're first starting out, you want to have a few, we call it reps in reserve. So when you first start out, you want to have a few reps in the tank. You want to have those left over. So you're not working to failure. You're working to a place that you feel like it's tough and it's challenging and it's demanding on your systems, both physically, but also maybe mentally, where you're having to push through a few reps at the end. And if somebody, put a gun to your head and said, do 5 more reps, you could probably do it. And that is a great place to go.
Ah, interesting. So here's where I normally chicken out, where where I get to the point of the reps where I have to push through. And so I
Yeah.
feel like that's when I should be adding in a little bit more, because I'm one of those people where I'm like, I'm done. But like, really, like if someone truly put a gun to my head, I have much more in me. I just am saying I'm done.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's the mental capacity where it's like you have to train yourself to push a little. And that comes with time, especially if you're motivated to do it. And you seem motivated to do it.
Yeah. Well, help me understand what I can get out of resistance bands, because they're very attractive to me for the reason that they're very inexpensive and they're great to travel with. So like what are the gains I could get with them versus like what are the limitations? Where do they stop being useful?
Yeah. The pros of resistance bands beyond being travel friendly is that it gives you that proprioceptive input, so you can feel where your limbs are in space, right? So you can feel this connection between your hands and your shoulders if you're doing a banded pull apart. And if you have a band wrapped around your legs and you're doing some squats, you can feel a deeper connection to how your legs are moving and the muscles of the hips and legs. So that is handy and helpful for people, especially if they're new to feeling things like that. Now, where there's a limitation is that it's really hard to progressively overload bands. Especially to the extent that you will get muscle change and bone density change, because we need the really heavy weights.
But what we're saying is that to age well, we just need much more muscle mass than a resistance band will generate for us.
Yeah, for sure. The same way that yoga can create muscle change and strength change and endurance changes to an extent, and then you're adapted to it, and it's easy now, and you plateau. So when you start, you don't know how to do a chaturanga, and over time you figure it out, you get stronger, and then you can do a bunch of chaturangas or down dogs, whatever have you, and then you've reached a limit in how strong you can get in your down dog.
Yeah, so like are you familiar with fire hydrants, like in a tabletop position, like externally rotating one knee? And so you're using the glute there, right? But it's just a body weight movement.
Sure.
So there's no like progressive overload.
Yeah.
But every time I do that movement, I feel my muscle working. So is the benefit there the endurance? Is it helping me with endurance?
If you do it a bunch of times, a bunch of reps, then sure. But I think mostly it's building some mobility for you. Like I think of that as an expression of your mobility.
Okay.
Like if you can control that position in relation to gravity, then you're demonstrating your hip mobility there. And if you spent a lot of time in that position just holding it, then it's all relative to like how much time, the time under tension,
Yes.
and your previous experience or just the previous, like the capacity of your body in that moment. And that includes like sleep and stress and all that.
That makes sense. So in your world,
You really got a
something
sciencey brain.
Thank you.
You do. Do you have a background in science?
No. I am a theater major.
I mean, oh my God, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you do? That
In
question
theater?
sounds so funny. It's like, what did you do? No, but how? I have a little background in theater too.
You do?
Was in school? I just derailed our conversation.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I was a theater major at UCSD, and I was like really into it growing up. That was like my heart and soul. And then I moved to Chicago and realized I didn't really want to be in that world of auditioning. And so it just kind of lost its near and dearness to my heart and really was replaced with yoga. Because yoga, you're teaching, there is a performative aspect to it. So I felt,
for sure,
that it kind of got moved over there.
But
that's mostly cool. I love to
Mm.
write. So I think like I like to understand something completely, because otherwise I'm walking around the world half understanding things and feeling really jittery about everything.
Okay, so that makes sense. Because you're dissecting things in this podcast series, right? You're trying to understand things, and you're asking really good questions. So I'm enjoying this. Okay, all right. What's next?
Oh, good. Oh wait, where do you remember where we left off? That totally went away from me.
We were talking about resistance bands.
I know. With the fire hydrant. This is my fire hydrant, by the way.
Yep. Great. Okay. Yep. Piss it away.
Okay. So in your world, would you use fire hydrants at the beginning during the warm-up phase to get ready and prepare your body for lifting weights?
Yeah, I have most of my clients roll through their hip CARs, their controlled articular rotations, which is just a fancy way of saying do a full range of motion through your hip with control and awareness. But yeah, we go into that position. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. You have them do the fire hydrant, but then all the other movements that the hip can make in a slow, controlled way.
Yes, typically. I mean, I have... And I have it depends on what their exact goals are for what I take them into, and certain things that I'm looking for. Like I have a client who has some hip stuff and history with right back or right low back congestion in a way. That may be his word. And so we're working with hip internal rotation. So we're not spending a lot of time in the fire hydrant position. We're kind of doing the opposite and rolling the hip in. But yeah, so it's focused in that way depending on what their goals are. However, I think the fire hydrant is cool. It's a great place to be. Fun to hang out there, and it is usually hard for people, especially in a tabletop position.
Okay, so this brings up another point of curiosity for me, which is, what do we need to do to make sure that our body is well prepared to load up with extra weights in a lot of positions that people don't spend a lot of time in an arm overhead position over the course of their day, or in a deep squat over the course of their day? And so how do we make sure that our body is well prepared so we're not like loading a position that is maybe going to make things worse for us? I don't know if I'm phrasing this the right way.
Yeah, why would it be worse? Tell me
Why
more.
would it be worse? Well, here's where you're kind of forcing me to articulate something that I don't really know how to articulate. If you have a joint that is restricted because muscles are kind of stiff and frozen around it, and so now you have to, let's say, like that's your shoulder, and you go to do a shoulder overhead movement, but your shoulder isn't capable of doing that movement itself. And so instead of your shoulder doing it, you kind of arch your back a little bit to get your arm up. Is that a problem to load that up with a bunch of weight? Will that open up the shoulder's ability at some point to be able to restore its own range of motion overhead? Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. Yeah, it might help to open it up over time. And I think if you lift something in a range of motion that, let's say, you can't control or you can't own, some people use that terminology, and I think it's helpful in this context. Like, what's the range of motion of your arm that you can own? Like, what can you show me that you can actually do with your arm? And that's a good range of motion to start in using your weights. If you pick up a weight and you go into a range of motion, or let's say you use a machine or a barbell, something that's more fixed, and you're kind of forcing your body into a certain position, it might not cause anything to happen that day. But if you keep doing that for years, then that's where things can go awry. Because if we don't have a neurological connection between our body and our brain, like if we don't know how to manage that on our own, if we can't own that position, then it's going to make it hard to, this is hard to articulate. If you do something once, it's probably not going to be a big deal. But if you do a movement that you can't really control in real life outside of the gym, then over time it will probably become a problem. So that's why there's been this big upswell the past 5 to 10 years in the yoga realm, which it sounds like you're attuned with, which is the mobility stuff. And that mobility stuff is all about how to control your joints and manage that range of motion that you have, and perhaps expand that range of motion that you have. And for most people, it's not going to be an issue, like going to the gym and getting into positions that they can't manage. Like if they lift weights, they're just going to reach a weight up into a position that they can control. And that will give them strength, but also flexibility. Like when you strength train, this takes us into another realm, but when you strength train, you are also creating a flexible joint. So yes, we can passively stretch, but we also were able to get some flexibility while we're strength training in those positions. So that's like a great twofer. Did I touch on your question?
Yes. Let me process this for a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, if you're working in a position that you don't own, could we define that as like using like compensation? Like I'm intending to move my shoulder, but my shoulder doesn't have that range. So instead of using my shoulder, I'm using my spine and my rib cage. I would say that I don't own that shoulder movement. And that's not
100%.
going to be problematic for me today. I can lift like that today.
No.
But if I stack this over time, it will become problematic for me.
I can't say 100% for sure, but it's much more likely. Yeah.
That makes
And that's why it's
complete
helpful
sense
to
to me.
have, yeah, right? Yeah. That's why it's helpful to have an outside set of eyes, whether it's a trainer or a friend, or you video record yourself while you're doing an exercise and then you watch back later and you're like, oh, wait, I thought I was lifting my arm overhead, but really I was doing a back bend. Interesting. Okay.
Mhm. I learned this about myself when I record myself teaching classes or just practicing, because I'll speed it up and do time lapses and stuff. And that's such a great way for me to check in and be like, oh my God, I thought I was doing this. And looking at it, like I was convinced I was doing this. And then looking at it, I'm like, I'm light years away from where I thought I was.
I get it. Excuse me. I get it. Yeah. But I want to like caution a little bit to like over analyzing the body in a way, because the body can move in so many different ways and it compensates all the time, and we kind of need it to, and it does that pretty efficiently, right? Like it's a really efficient machine and it's going to find the easiest pathway. And I see some of my clients who get a little hung up on doing the perfect thing and having it be the perfect way. And while we can aim for that in the gym, and there is an argument for doing that, and it can be beneficial, especially if you're lifting crazy amounts of weight. But at some point, it doesn't help as much, and then it just becomes a little bit of a way to, I don't know. It feels like energy that could be directed in some other way, because we're fluid human beings and we move. I mean, look at how I'm holding my body right now. I'm like slouched into my right hip. I'm kind of slouched onto my right side, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, and I don't feel any pain there.
Yeah.
But when I go into the gym and I do incline bench press really heavy, which I've been doing the past few weeks, I do notice that when I get to those last few reps and I'm really pushing hard, I notice that I do get a little compressed on my right side rib. And so I'm aware, but it doesn't mean that I have to be afraid of that position. Like being friends with my body is more important to me than being afraid of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I
And
guess what
it's
I'm trying to say
something.
is like the stories
Mhm.
that we tell about our bodies have a huge impact on how we perceive ourselves, how we move, how we feel things, how we feel pain. It it's a lot. So the words that we choose and the stories that we tell about our bodies are have a big impact.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, because my mind is very precise, and there can be times when I kind of get logged down in perfectionism, and I know instinctually at a gut
Samesies.
level that what you're saying is true. It's like there's a point of diminishing returns. Like, yes, try to be precise, but then don't obsess over it, because you're spending a lot of energy obsessing over something where you're getting almost no return on investment. So spend it maybe like, I don't know
I mean,
how
if I
else,
was a
but
ballerina, like if I was a ballerina at the New York fancy place where they do ballerina stuff, and I was making $150,000 a year, and I had to have the precise foot point and the precise like angle of my bod, like, yeah, I'm going to work my ass off to get there. But most people sit at the desk all day, and they could really benefit from just doing some rows and some deadlifts and some weighted lunges. Like, do that, and you'll be probably like well on your way to feeling better, looking better, different, and I don't know, all kinds of other stuff. Maybe showing up differently for your family and your friends.
Okay, so if I get up tomorrow and I start incorporating strength training after my yoga practice, where just to gut check us here, it sounds like the yoga practice, at least in what I'm referring to as a yoga practice, a more mobility-based yoga practice, is a really great warm-up for strength training. Is that a fair thing to say?
Sure. Yeah, I'm down with that.
So if
especially
I
if you
wake
love
up
it
tomorrow
and you have fun.
Yeah. Okay. So if I wake up
No,
tomorrow
it means a big deal.
to love it and to have fun.
Yeah, we have to enjoy. Yeah, we have to enjoy and have fun. The physical things that we're doing. Not all the time, because lifting weights sometimes is not fun, but it's necessary. So. Okay, I distracted you. Go forth.
You're good. So if I wake up tomorrow, I do my yoga practice, and now I pick one of the 6 things, and I find some weight where I can do a moderate amount of reps and sets with that weight and feel those things that you're talking about, increased heart rate, little muscle pumping sensations. And I continue to do this throughout my life. What will be different for me in 30 years than if I just go down the same path that I've been going down of body weight only yoga?
You're 35, you said?
Yeah.
So you'd be 65. So some of your friends might, if you're strength training, okay. So some of your friends who didn't strength train, they might be having more joint issues and needing hip replacements and sort. So you might be avoiding stuff like that, and at the same time be capable to travel and do the lovely things that you want to keep doing, which involves inherently independence, like not having to rely on other people to do physical things for you. You can always ask for help, but the stuff that happens when we age is muscle deterioration, joint deterioration, needing things replaced, or having bone breakages. So you'd have fewer bone breakages ideally. And I would ask you like what your dreams are for your 60s, and what are those? That's what you would be able to do.
Yeah, my dream would be to feel as good as or better than I feel right now.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good dream. I just did a workout the other day with my heavy bench press, and I was like, oh my God, this is the most amount of weight that I've ever lifted in this position. And I'm the oldest I've ever been, which is always the case. You're always the oldest you've ever been because it's right now. but it's like, whoa, I just bench pressed a pair of 40s and I'm 40. Like, I feel amazing right now. How is that possible? And it's possible because I've lifted weights for the past 5-6 years, and my body's changed a lot, and I feel like I'm so much more capable. So if that's happened in the past 6 years, and I'm the oldest I've been, and I feel the greatest that I've ever felt, like it's just going to keep working. It doesn't mean that the same thing that I'm doing now will be the same exact thing that I do when I'm 60, or 70, because that will obviously change a little bit. But yeah, I think you'll be crazy capable and feel better.
Is it
At
ever
least I
too
hope
late?
that for you.
Yeah, thank you. Is it ever too late to start?
No.
So even if you are the person who has had the hip replacement and you've had the miles and the wear and tear, it's still worth it to get into the gym. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're 60, do it. If you're 75, do it. If you're out of rehab for your hip, do it.
And so if you feel like you don't want to go it alone, like you need some resources and support, what are the best what's the best resource out there?
Oh, that's a good question, because there's so much information out there right now. So I think you
It's hard
find
to
somebody
sift
that you
through it all.
trust. Yeah, it is. You find somebody that you trust and that has a story that somehow relates to yours, and you go forth and have it be a conversation between the two of you. And that's a good way. And that could be a trainer, it could be a coach, it could be a friend that's been going to the gym for a while, and you go work out together, something like that. Yeah, I think that's a good way, especially because we're social people. So
Can it be someone you find online?
yeah. I've never met
Because I
my
find
my
everyone
business coach,
online.
but we jive. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
exactly.
I've never met you online, but we jive, so it's cool.
Yeah, so because I know like you work with clients, how many do you work like percentage wise remotely versus in person?
Oh, good question. Oh man. Right now it's about half and half. So I have half of my clients that are on a DIY program. It's called Strong Club. And so they get the
Mm-hmm.
programming in an app that has videos and exercises, and they do it on their own. And then they check in with me, and if they need help, I'm there for them. So that's my virtual clientele, and then the other half I see in person, and we meet for training sessions, and it's super fun. So it all depends,
Interesting.
online
So
and in person.
strong club is more like people do it on their own time, but they have support and guidance from you.
For sure. Yeah, they have a plan for me. I give them the plan and they execute. So it does require, I can hold them accountable a little bit, because I can see if they did it or not, and we can chit chat and stuff like that. But it does require some chutzpah to like go out and go.
Right, of course. Yeah, that's the big thing with the online stuff is you're on your own for motivation quite often.
Right.
Um and, and then do those people go to the gym? They have their home gym set up?
Both. Both.
Both.
Some of them are at home, some of them are at the gym, and yeah, that I'm just thinking. Yep, it's those two. It's a mix.
Cool. Okay. That that makes sense. Because I was wondering how you would do a remote session if somebody needs to be at the gym, just are they like bringing their laptop into the gym or something to get on a Zoom call with you?
Yeah, I think that could work, but it'd be challenging. There'd be audio issues, and yeah, I think if the space was appropriate, it could work. But yeah, my Strong Club people, they bring in their phone and they look at the app and they look at the little video, and they're like, okay, cool, I do that now. All right. And Macklen says do it 3 sets of 12. Go heavy. Great, let's do it.
Oh, amazing. Man, I should sign up for Strong Club because you'll just like take all of the mental effort out of it for me.
Yep, you're welcome to. That is part of it. It's like, you don't have to think about it.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
have to feel it and experience it.
Yeah. I
Which
mean,
is no joke.
I'm one of those people. I understand enough that I feel like I could sort of I could self-manage something, but I see how it would be just totally beneficial to have somebody else tell me what to do. Please, maestro,
Yeah.
tell me what to do.
Right.
So Macklin, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, are you accepting new people into Strong Club now?
Strong Club is currently closed. I'm revamping it a little bit for the fall. We reopen August,
Nice.
September. Yeah, so there's so that's closed, but there'll be a waiting list. Actually, the best way is to join my mailing list. It's called the Locker Room, and that's where all the announcements will go out for Strong Club. We meet in the locker room.
Oh, I love it. What a great name. Is that on your website?
Yeah, I'll send you the link. It's
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I'll pop it in the show notes or whatever okay. Podcasters call the note section.
I think you got it.
I'll put it in the show notes for us. Well, thank you so much for today's conversation. You've helped distill some things down for me. And are there any parting thoughts that you would like to share before we wrap up?
The hardest part is starting, so just get started. You'll figure it out along the way. Pick up weights that are challenging but doable, and you'll be fine. And try and have some fun. If that means going out with other people at the gym, do that. If that means doing it by yourself with your dog and that's fun, do that. Like, just make it a little bit of a party, and it'll settle in for a long-term routine, which is what we need. So those are my parting thoughts.
Amazing. All right. Well, we're going to have to catch up after I have a little bit of strength training under my belt. And I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm here for you.
And then I want to retest carrying those water bottles up the stairs and see how that feels different.
Yeah, that's so smart. I love it.
All right. Well, let me turn off the recording and then I'll just find like a cool place to end
thanks
it.
for having me. Okay. Yeah.
All righty, my friend. That wraps up our conversation with Macklen Mayse. I really hope you found it as insightful as I did. We covered so much today. What strength is, how to get started at home, at the gym. Since our conversation, I will say I've started experimenting. I'm not a gym person. I'm not a pedal to the metal person. I don't like going all out. I'm more of a dip your toes in the water and see what happens type of person. But I also heard Macklen, what she was saying, of a lot of people start with weights and they pick up something too light because they're also in that category. So I want to make sure that I'm actually pushing myself. Here's my approach. We have some equipment at home. We have some kettlebells. I probably need to go out and buy heavier ones at this point. We have some resistance bands and we have some free weights. And so basically what I've been doing is adding weights into my yoga practice, and even on some days swapping out my yoga practice entirely to do some weighted movements. There's similar movements to what we do in yoga. There's squats, there's lunges, there's twists, there's pushing, there's pulling. Actually, yoga doesn't have too much pulling, but that's a story for a different day. And basically, my goal during these sessions is to feel a little bit of what Macklen was talking about. Can I get my heart rate up? Can I feel my muscles kind of start to pump and get a little bit more fatigued? Can I embrace a slight sense of discomfort here? And then I'm okay. If I feel it later on, or if I feel it a little bit the next day, good, I know that I did something. That's really my only goal. That's what I'm after. And I'll tell you, even after just a few weeks of this, I have started to feel a shift. My joints overall feel more stable. So less popping, less cracking in the joints. I can go into more intense ranges of motion in my joints without, feeling like it's this big ordeal or like I need to prepare myself. I just kind of feel ready to do things. I can tell that my energy has improved, which I really like. And the last thing I'll say about it is that when I do come to my yoga mat, I've noticed that I have more strength available to me. So I don't get tired as easily. I can do more stuff and just feel more confident overall. So, really good things here. What I'm really excited to do is to synthesize this for us at a community level so that yoga in your living room can start bringing you more of this externally loaded movement practices. The really great news about the yoga that we do is that it's already designed to strengthen your postural muscles and to rewire your movement patterns, which is just like a fancy way of saying that your brain is wired up to your body in a particular way, and it's making movement choices based on that wiring. And so some of your body parts your brain is overusing, and some of your body parts your brain is underusing. And when we take that wiring and now we go apply it at the gym or in a class, we run the risk of overdoing it in the places where we typically overdo things and underdoing it in the places where we typically underdo things. And so a regular yoga practice, especially in the type that we practice here, is going to help your brain wire up to your body in a more optimal way. It's going to bring those snoozy muscles online, and it's going to de-emphasize the work on the muscles that are doing the lion's share right now, who maybe need a little bit of a break. So the yoga that we are doing is setting you up really, really well to now go totally rock a strength training practice. What that strength training practice looks like, that's the next frontier in my own life. And I can't wait to keep working with Macklen. I'm actually thinking about signing up for her strong club because I'm not a gym person, and I know she can give me a program that will be customized to my interests and my experience level and will take into account my lifestyle. I think that's so important because a lot of us just don't feel at home at the gym. That's not a cozy place. It's like a smelly, weird lighting, weird people type of place for a lot of us. But just because the gym feels weird doesn't mean that we should count ourselves out of building more strength, right? So that's what I got for us today. Definitely check a look. What am I even talking about? Definitely take a peek at what Macklen has to offer. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, do the things. Leave the review. Give me some feedback. I can't tell you, it's literally the best part of my day when I get a comment from you or a text message or an email from you sharing what your takeaways were. This is a big, juicy topic. 30 years from now, everybody's going to know this like it's common knowledge. But right now, we're the first ones. We're the ones who are like, hey, did you know this is important to do? So I just feel so excited and honored to go on this journey with you where we're figuring this stuff out together. That's all I got for you today, my friend. From my living room to yours. See you soon.